Halftime show, Terry Ford and some random dude in the other room who we don't recognize. What's up, man?
Good to be back.
Hey, look at you for today.
Yeah.
You're going to be hanging out with Preston tomorrow.
It's a bit of a funny week around here, but we're making it work.
Hey, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Tyler's back, hanging out here on the halftime show as we roll till 3 here on the game. Of course, tonight's Ole Miss invading CLA to take on South Carolina. Ole Miss is solid, and they've got one of the best basketball coaches in America. So this is not a gimme W. Because South Carolina win? Absolutely. But this is not going to be just roll the balls out and go blow somebody out by 20 tonight.
And it's funny, the similarities between these two teams. You know, we talk about South Carolina and how they weren't getting much love into the preseason with being picked 13th in the league. Ole Miss wasn't much higher. They were projected to be 10th. And look, they had a bad season a season ago, which is why they ended up firing Kermit Davis and going out and hiring Chris Beard, which, you know, you can say what you want about his off-the-field, stuff, which certainly is a concern, but he's a good basketball coach. Took Texas Tech to all those NCAA tournaments, had Texas off to a really good start in year number 1 out there before ultimately getting fired, for the off-the-court stuff. But, they weren't getting a lot of love this preseason. They went 13-0 in non-conference play. The conference stuff's been a little bit up and down. They kind of got ran over by Auburn at home the other weekend, finally losing a game at home there. But they come in, they play a similar style to South Carolina, a little bit slower pace. So it's not a team that's going to be running up and down the court on South Carolina, but should be a pretty evenly contested matchup. It should be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, Chris Beard off the court's a different conversation, obviously. Chris Beard on the court, they almost won a national title at Texas Tech.
Yep.
They were this close to winning a national title at Texas Tech. And then that team, that Texas team last year that got to the Elite Eight, that was Chris Beard's team.
Oh, yeah.
No offense, Rodney Terry. That was Chris Beard's team that got to the Elite Eight. So Beard is a high-level college basketball coach. And he will, if he stays at Ole Miss, he will win at Ole Miss. And he will win pretty big at some point. Obviously, they're not there yet, but like you said, it's really odd because, again, Ole Miss was picked near the bottom of the league, too, along with South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Not as low as South Carolina, but Ole Miss was picked in the bottom half of the league, too. And right now, they're 18-4. They were started the year 13-0, if I remember correctly.
Yep. All their non-conference games.
But this is an interesting team. It's like the opposite of a Chris Beard team. This team is 30th in offensive efficiency, and they're sitting in the hundreds. Like 143 in defensive efficiency. So Chris Beard typically hangs his hat on defense. This team is all about buckets. And they look at Chris Beard and go, Coach, we can't shoot the ball all the time and expect us to play defense too. We got to rest somewhere. So this is an Ole Miss team that South Carolina should be able to do things on offense against, but they're a really good three-point shooting team of the Rebels, and they can score. And so it's going to be an interesting basketball game tonight.
They can score, but the trouble that they run into, mentioned them, tired and fatigued, they don't have a deep bench. And that's something that's plagued them a lot of this season, plagued them against Auburn the other weekend or on Saturday where they got outscored by, I think, 20 points in the second half of that game. They don't really go deep into the bench. South Carolina does go pretty deep into its bench. So that's something that hopefully could play into the favor of South Carolina coming up tonight. But, all that being said, obviously we know South Carolina got ranked 15th yesterday in the AP poll. You want to continue to capitalize on the momentum. Now everybody's legitimately paying attention to you. You're getting the respect you've been wanting this entire time. Go out there and pick up another win and keep this train rolling.
Well, now you're the hunted. You're not the hunter in this case. You're the hunted. You're the ranked team. It's at home. Ole Miss wants to come in and they want to kick their NCAA tournament resume, right?
Right.
What's better than getting a quad 1 win against a 15th ranked team in the country in their barn?
Right.
So, and look, do I think South Carolina wins? Yes, I do. But Ole Miss can beat you. That's a good. I mean, they went to look. They have struggled on the road in the SEC. They're 1-3 on the road in conference, but they did go to College Station and beat an underachieving A&M team.
Right.
So they do have a road win. Look again. They don't. They are the team. They play slow. They don't play as slow as South Carolina. Ole Miss plays. Their tempo is in the 200s. South Carolina's in the 300s. This is the one team in the conference I think that South Carolina is going to play the rest of the way off the top of my head that plays slower. The rest of these teams like LSU and Florida, you already played Kentucky and Tennessee that want to play a lot faster than you. So one of the advantages South Carolina has had is they've played their tempo in those games, and they've pulled Tennessee and Kentucky into slower tempo games. Ole Miss isn't going to be affected as much if South Carolina plays their tempo.
Sure.
It's slower than Ole Miss plays, but it's not like Ole Miss is going, wow, I'm bored. This kind of stinks. Man, this is slow. It'll be a game tonight. Again, Ole Miss is going to shoot threes, and they can make them. But here's the one big weakness Ole Miss has. They give up offensive rebounds in bunches. And South Carolina is a solid to good offensive rebounding team. So you might be seeing second chance points and some, extra possessions because you're pulling down offensive boards. Just saying.
Also, and I don't know if this has been updated yet or not, but Jamarian Sharp, one of their best defenders, tallest at 7'5".
He's like 9'7".
Yeah. He missed the game against Auburn.
Illness.
I believe at last update he's day to day, and he was leading the SEC in blocks. So that's pretty big, key if they don't have him tonight.
He's a gigantic human being at 7'5". And if he doesn't play tonight, then you have to play Sissy, your other big, more minutes than you want
They
to.
do have good size on their roster.
They've got some size, especially if you have the 7'5" dude. They're only playing a lot of their guys are 6'3", 6'4", 6'6", and you have the two bigs. The point guard's 5'11", but the rest of these guys have good size. So again, tonight it will be interesting. If South Carolina plays the way they've been playing, they should walk out with a win. But Ole Miss is dangerous. Yeah. They're a solid basketball team.
But I think up to this point, South Carolina has earned the benefit of the doubt in all these games. You go on the road, you can beat a team like Tennessee, you can beat a team like Kentucky that were way more favored than you were going into that game. That, again, a little bit more of an even matchup against Ole Miss tonight, which South Carolina's 4.5-point favorite. We should give them the benefit of the doubt because they've proven that so far this season.
You just don't want your players thinking like that.
That's right. And that's kind of the interesting conversation to have coming away from them being ranked. And, I don't think they're going to run into this necessarily, but do you get overconfident? You get a little bit too cocky, like, hey, we are that team. We are as good as people say we are. How do you respond to that? And I think, Lamont Paris's demeanor and his coaching style, I think he's going to have these guys pretty grounded where I don't think that's going to be an issue. But, maybe if you get off to a slow start tonight or something like that, it's like, okay, let's kind of rein this back in, remember who we are, and play our brand of basketball.
Yeah, I think you have an older team, a very mature team. I don't think you fall into that either with the, hey, coach, these dudes aren't Kentucky or Tennessee. You've been watching the last couple of weeks there at Lamont. They're a quarter zip. Hey, we'll take care of Ole Miss. No, I don't think you have that mindset with a more experienced, mature squad like South Carolina has. You said it. And we've been saying this like a broken record. Ever since, even before the Alabama game, we were saying this. You play your style, you play your pace, you play your tempo, you continue to do the things that you're being coached up to do, and you keep executing the way you're executing, you'll walk off the court with a win. And that again, that's the formula tonight, Tyler. You play your game, you play Gamecock basketball that you've been playing, and it's been getting better and better and better as the season has gone along. You continue this style and tempo and pace, and you keep staying in your lane, you have a really good shot to walk off the court with a win.
Absolutely.
So we'll see it tonight as Ole Miss comes to town. 6 o'clock, we start everything up here on the game in Columbia and also in Myrtle Beach with the pregame 6:30 tip with Chris Beard and his Rebs coming in to face South Carolina. And the thing with Beard real quick, getting the job at Ole Miss was controversial for about 30 seconds, and we moved on to the next thing. Beard will win there. But the interesting thing is when he wins, what will happen? Because conventional wisdom says he'll piece out of Oxford to get back to a big-time program.
Sure.
But we thought about that with Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss has paid Lane Kiffin a lot of money to stay at Ole Miss. If Chris Beard starts winning in Oxford, does Ole Miss say, you know what? We like this winning in basketball too. Let's pay this guy not to leave. They got a lot of SEC money in this conference.
They do because he's somebody that, again, his off-field stuff, not great obviously, but is a really good basketball coach and will be courted by other programs. Mm-hmm. There may be an opening in Lexington, Kentucky before too long if things continue to turn in this direction, and I imagine he's going to be one of those names that might be at the top of the list for that job. So, yeah, you're going to have to push a little bit more his way if you want to hang on to him. If they continue to have, again, they're in year number 1, and they've made a remarkable turnaround. And as long as he's there, he's going to be successful. But, yeah, he's going to be at the hot commodity for a lot of other places.
I mean, there'll be if he goes deep in the tournament with Ole Miss in the next couple of years, which I think he will, he's a good tournament coach too. There will be people coming to Colin with big bank accounts and bigger brands that will push off the court stuff because winning is the greatest deodorant. And if you can win big, people will make excuses for you no matter what kind of vile things you do away from the basketball court or the football field or the baseball diamond.
And typically, when you're a coach that had what happened to him, usually you end up at a mid-major as your kind of rehab assignment, get back into winning, and then you get your job at a high-level institution. He went a completely different route by being able to land it up. What wasn't a great Ole Miss team was able to turn them around in 1 year. So, already kind of back in the national spotlight again, back in the conversation for for whatever jobs may be coming open these next couple of years. But again, tonight's the focus, and South Carolina's got a lot on its plate tonight to handle.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the world we live in sports.
Yep.
Again, would I hire him? No, and I love him as a coach. Before all that happened, the incident. When I was, in Baltimore, Maryland had an opening, and this is before Beard got to the national championship game. Mm-hmm. And I just been watching his career, and I'm like, they got to talk to this guy.
I mean, he's won everywhere that he's been.
I go, you got to talk to this guy now and get him before he blows up. And I'm right once a year, and I was screaming about Chris Beard. And obviously, once you go to the national championship game, your price tag shoots up way high. He's a hell of a coach. He just is. It's just once that incident happened, it's like, as much as I love you as a coach, I'm not hiring you. But there are going to be people that hire him, Tyler, because he can win, and he can win big. And they're going to pay him for that, too. And they'll make excuses for everything because that's what we do, right?
Auburn was just in the weird place that they had just fired Hugh Freeze a few seasons before for his conduct, and then they turned around and hired Chris Beard. So, as long as they can look themselves in the mirror and sleep comfortably at night, I guess that's what all the
know what'll help them sleep comfortably?
A lot of money and winning.
A lot of winning and a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they'll use that as a reason why they, and of course, if they're also ready helping him with his issues and helping him rehabilitate himself as a person, which they wouldn't be doing any of that if he wasn't this high-level basketball coach, right?
Right.
If it's you or me, they ain't hiring us if we've got problems, but you'll hire Chris Beard. And, but again, Ole Miss isn't alone. If Ole Miss didn't hire Chris Beard, trust me, Chris Beard would have got hired. And he'll be bringing his crew into CLA tonight. Ole Miss, South Carolina, again, 6 o'clock here, pregame, 6:30 tip on the game. We're going to come back, a very interesting development in the world of college athletics. At Dartmouth? What? We'll get into that next. It's halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're going to roll this baby up until 3 on the game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, till 3 here on the game. Now, do not forget, we have our Valentine's Day contest. The Sticks and Balls, I think we call this thing. Valentine's Day.
Strikes.
Balls and Strikes. I knew it was something like that.
Close.
Balls and Strikes. Kalen came up with it from B106.
The Fun Squad.
That's right, because they're fun. Balls and Strikes contest. You just basically go to 1075thegame.com. Look in the little media roll, the flippy thingy at the top. Once it lands on Balls and Strikes Valentine's Day contest, click on it. Take a look at it. You can get tickets for all 3 games in the opening series against Miami of Ohio, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. After the Friday game, you leave. Do we go home, Tara? No. You go to the Hilton Garden Inn right down the road from here, and you're going to get accommodations for Friday and Saturday night. You're also going to get breakfast for Friday and Saturday, and they're also going to feed you a pregame meal. So you're set up for food, place to take a snooze, and all 3 games on the weekend. That is a Valentine's Day extravaganza.
Can't think of anything better.
Heck no. So you can go and just register at 1075thegame.com. Fill out the little information, click submit. And we're going to do the drawing on Friday. So you got between now and Friday to get in. Again, it's 1075thegame.com. All right, a pretty interesting story broke yesterday, late afternoon, early evening-ish, where the National Labor Relations Board, a regional manager, yesterday ruled that the Dartmouth men's basketball team could vote to form a union. Obviously, no other group of athletes have formed a union. Northwestern tried back about 2014, but it was shot down because the NLRB in that region at that time didn't deem it fair to the other athletes on campus. Now, this decision, to break it down, it's because of working conditions and the fact you do basically answer to a supervisor, and the school does generate revenue on basketball. Now, Dartmouth, the pushback from Dartmouth is that the basketball program loses money. They say, we're not making money on the basketball program, so you can't ask us to pay these athletes a salary because we're not making money. We're losing money. And basically the NLRB said, tough.
But you are generating revenue.
You are generating money. You're just not making enough to say you're making a profit.
Just because you end up in the red doesn't mean you're not generating.
You know how many businesses have to pay employees even though they're at a loss?
Yeah.
Because employee's an employee. The attorneys for the players push back saying, no, the school's numbers, the books, leave out important and lucrative revenue streams that the basketball team contributes to. Basically, you're slanting your books.
Yes.
Saying, this is how much we make, like ticket sales or TV or whatever.
The Ivy League, I'm sure, is roped into the ESPN Plus TV deal, so they make something. They
make something off of TV and something off of ticket sales.
Yeah.
But the attorney for the players go, no. How about this revenue stream? Basketball contributes to this. Oh, you have a revenue stream here that basketball can contribute to. It could be a digital. It could be a social, whatever it is.
Sure.
There are other ways that they're making money, and the basketball program is contributing to that way of generating revenue. That's the pushback from the attorneys. So basically, this is going to get appealed by Dartmouth.
Yes.
It's going to end up in the Supreme Court before it's over with.
Likely.
But while this is going on, Dartmouth can vote to unionize, and you have 15 players. You just need 8. And the word is the basketball team will vote to unionize.
Yes.
So here we go. Here we go, baby.
Who would have?
Here we go.
Who would have foreseen this being the place where something like this got rolling?
A place with no scholarships, by the way.
Yeah, Ivy League doesn't have scholarships.
Yeah.
And they're a private institution.
Yes. So this is where conceivably all of it starts. Now, there is a type of litigation like this going through the courts in Southern California for the Southern Cal basketball team. It hasn't gotten as far yet to be a thing. This was NLRB, a regional manager making a choice or a decision or a ruling that says, yes, Dartmouth can unionize. They are student employees, not student athletes.
Right.
So we'll see, man, but this could be the beginning.
Yeah.
It could be the beginning.
And what you mentioned out there with Southern Cal basketball, while it's not as far along, it is expected to eventually get to this level based on the rules within the state of California. So that'd be the first instance of a public institution wielding that kind of power with, athletes being able to unionize compared to Northwestern, which is a private school, even though they give out scholarships, and now Dartmouth.
Well, here's the thing. It's going to be interesting because if the NCAA or the schools lose, which it feels like they will, again, what do you do? Do you see if you're smart? To me. And look, they've got a bunch of people there whose IQ is twice mine.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, our pets have a higher IQ than me. But the point is, if it were me, and this is something that they've never done, I would read the room and understand that we're going to take an L in some way, shape, or form here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to keep what we've had. The NCAA, I think you and I were talking about this morning when we were reading this. The NCAA, and this is something actually which is so weaselly it's smart. The NCAA in their NIL legislation on Capitol Hill has also put in a little something in this legislation that says that collegiate athletes cannot be employees. They continue to be student athletes under the NIL law that they're trying to push, which is basically dumping the antitrust exemption as well.
Sure.
Which, by the way, is not going to work.
Which is why they're pushing for this, because that's their way to kind of skirt around it.
It's sort of like, look, I'm not a political guy. I don't have any desire to be a political guy. But anybody that halfway pays attention to anything, when you're building all these bills and legislation, like a senator will go, okay, I'll jump on board, but here's what you got to put in it for me.
Sure.
And all of a sudden the bill becomes 17,000 pages.
I believe that's what we call pork, right?
Yes. A lot of filling.
I took political science.
Look at you. And so I just, watched The West Wing. So
close enough.
That is what that little extra something is in there saying this is our NIL law, but we also want collegiate athletes to be student athletes and not employees. It's not, none of it's going to work. I mean, this stuff has been bouncing around D.C. for 2 years, hadn't even gotten to the floor for a debate or a conversation. It's not happening.
And this is kind of one of those things with Dartmouth. It's not going to change overnight. And let's say that they are able to, and again, the school's going to vote to appeal this, but let's say that they were able to keep this union that they end up voting on that will likely pass. Like, the ripple effect of this over the landscape of college sports, it's going to take years for that to take full effect, and what that looks like, we don't really know. Is that the breakaway from the NCAA? Who knows? Does the NCAA meet them in the middle with something? Who knows? Like, there's more questions than answers at this point in time, but it's kind of the potential tipping point for the floodwaters opening up later on.
Here's what I would do if I'm the NCAA or if I'm these schools. I don't want them to unionize.
No.
So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get ahead of it, and I'm going to say, why don't we sit down with representation of the players, representation of the TV networks, the NCAA and the schools, and what do I want to do, Tyler?
It's collectively bargain.
I want to bargain, but I want to do it before you become a union, and you can call yourself whatever you want.
I will say this, and we talked about the deal with the SEC and the Big Ten, this little collaboration they have. Now, this is a completely different thing because they're not talking about necessarily the, pay for play or student athlete or student athletes becoming employees, but they have talked about, we want to bring athletes in, we want to bring coaches, we want to put everybody at the table, and that's to talk about the issues that are plaguing college sports, not necessarily, these resolvements necessarily, but that's one step.
That's a smart step.
These two, the most powerful leagues in all of college sports, are willing to bring everybody to the table to have these conversations. What does that mean going forward? We don't know, but it's a start.
Like, I'll give you an example of this. My dad, Dean Ford, worked for General Electric. He was the greatest forklift driver in the history of General Electric. He was the fastest forklift driver. He set speed records.
Yeah.
But anyway, where he worked, they didn't want the union to get in there. So they got ahead of it and negotiated with the employees and gave them union-type deals before the union could get in. That's almost what you want to do here. You want to get to the table with everybody and put together deals everybody's happy with so you don't get to the point of union. But they're not going to do it because they're dopes and this thing will end up going to the Supreme Court. They'll end up losing, and then at some point in the next so many years, then you're going to have unions with collegiate athletes because these guys don't think forward because they're too selfish because they're trying to keep everything like it's 1987.
Pretty much.
But anyway, the first salvo at Dartmouth. We'll see where it goes. It's going to end up in the Supreme Court, most likely. All right, we'll get back in here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Shane Beamer. We really skipped the stuff Shane Beamer talked about Friday because we were talking about the new special teams coach and things of that nature. Shane had a couple of interesting things that he had talked about. And we want to fire those up for you here next on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, rolling up until 3 here on the game. Let's talk some women's hoops here on the halftime show. Here on the game. Another successful weekend. Brad Muller with halftime adjustments. He's a maniac with halftime adjustments. Dawn calls Brad in. Okay, Brad, take the whiteboard. Brad Muller, play-by-play voice of the #1 ranked women's team in the country. Hey, you know, man, it was interesting. It was almost like, I mean, not exactly, but it was almost kind of like the same thing at Auburn. Start a little slow, start to get cooking, and then light the place on fire in the second half.
Yeah, it's obviously a win is a win. You take it any way you can get it. But when you've had the success that South Carolina has, you start to worry a little bit when you see slow starts like that. Just because we've been accustomed to South Carolina, blowing teams out of the water. But you kind of expect that at sometimes midway through the season or midway through the conference season, where you kind of hit that wall a little bit. But the neat thing is, they just kind of stick with it, keep running their offense, and eventually the shots go down, because it was very similar to the Auburn game the other day, where it looked like they were getting decent shots or shots they wanted. They just weren't falling like they had been all year. The Gamecocks had led the SEC in field goal percentage and three-point shooting all season long, and they still do. But the three-point shooting has gone down. I think the last 4 games, about 4 games ago, the Gamecocks as a team were shooting around 45%. They're down to 41%, where I think in the last 4 games they've shot under 30% from three-point range. So obviously you'd like to see that pick up a little bit, but the thing is, they're still sticking with it and getting enough contributions to get things done and pull away because of their depth. So it's a good thing to see that they're being tested and still finding a way to get the win.
Brad Muller, our buddy Brad, the play-by-play voice for the South Carolina Gamecocks, coming off their win over Ole Miss over the weekend. Brad, it's funny though, and you bring it up. I mean, they were on fire all year. 45% from 3 for a season is just not sustainable. That's right. Even Steph Curry goes, I can't do that.
Right.
So, I mean, now that they're quote unquote down to 41%, that's still really good. But to your point, they have so many ways they can beat you. I mean, they can beat you from the perimeter this year. They got players who can make threes, can beat you off the bounce, can create. They still can bludgeon you in the low post. They still defensively get in your grill and make you uncomfortable. They can play fast. Now they can play slow. I mean, that's the good news is Dawn with this team has a plan B, C, and D. Not to say you're going to win every game, but there's always an adjustment you can make because you can do so many things to get a W.
Yeah, and they play off of each other. Obviously, when you're hitting from the outside, that makes the defense play you a little bit more out there on the perimeter, which does what? It opens things up on the inside for your bigs like Camila Cardoso and things like that, and prevents teams from really, doubling down inside as much as we've seen in years past. Like in previous years when you had Aaliyah Boston down there and everybody was double and triple teaming her because South Carolina was not as consistent in those years shooting from the outside, so they packed it in and they would take their chances with the perimeter shooting. This year, for most of the year, you couldn't do that because the Gamecocks had 2 or 3 of the better three-point shooters in the SEC, especially with Tina Paopao, who's one of the best in the nation. And so you had to play them honest. Where it gets interesting now is for this week, at least for the next 2 games, is South Carolina will be without Camila Cardoso, their big inside, their big 6'7" center, because she's going to play with the Brazilian national team. At least what was what we were led to believe. She's going to be there with the Olympic trials with Team Brazil, and certainly wish her the best of luck there. But get back quickly. So you take away the big 6'7" girl inside. It'll be interesting to see, 1, who steps up inside, and 2, how defenses play you. Are they paying more attention to the perimeter, or are they just saying, all right, we're going to make sure you're only going to shoot from the perimeter because it's going to be tougher for you with someone other than Camila Cardoso to beat you inside. So interesting test in the next couple of games for South Carolina. And
you mentioned Cardoso not being there for the next 2 games. How do you think Dawn Staley and company go about approaching the starting lineup? And for somebody like Ashlyn Watkins, who's jumped into the starting lineup these past 2 games with Chloe Kitts, not being 100%, though she was back in the last game for a couple minutes there, how impressed you've been with her and what she's been able to do in this starting role?
Yeah, Ashland's really fun to watch, and again, she's just a sophomore, and you kind of lick your chops thinking about what she can be 2 years from now because she's doing so many exciting things right now in her second season, and she just does a little bit of everything, up and down the floor. She's exciting because she finishes under the basket. She's got a decent mid-range. She can shoot from the baseline. She can get you going in transition, and she's been good defensively. I mean, coming off the bench, other than the last 2 games, even though she comes off the bench, she's second in the SEC in block shots behind Cardoso, and she's such a force down there. It will be interesting though without Cardoso, because obviously Ashland starting the last 2 games basically at the 4 with Chloe Kitts under the weather. So okay, assuming does she slide over to the 5 or does Sanaya Fagan slide in there? What do you do? Hopefully Chloe Kitts is back to 100%. You mentioned she played the other day, but you could tell she was still a little sluggish. So hopefully she's back to 100%, and nothing else was going through the locker room. So I'm interested to see. I would assume that they keep starting Watkins and she slides over to the 5. Obviously, you lose a little bit of your depth now when you have a bench player coming in to start with Camilla gone. So it's going to be up to people like Sanaya Fagan and some of the others to make the most of their opportunities. But Watkins, right now it's just hard to keep her out of the lineup because she's doing some good things on both ends of the floor with back-to-back double-doubles in her first 2 career starts.
I guess, Brad, the silver lining of not having Camilla Cardozo for a couple of games is now you get to look what it's like playing without Camilla Cardozo for a couple of games. And if you get in the NCAA tournament, and God forbid she's out for long stretches for foul trouble or whatever the case, you'll know the different ways you can play without your best post player.
Yeah, exactly. And the neat thing is, you're seeing how other people are going to step up. We talked about Watkins and how she has stepped up. Sanaya Fagan is another one who she's always been very good offensively. It was basically more defense was needed to get more minutes, and she's been doing a better job of that. And I would say this to anyone the last couple of years, and they always looked at me like I'm crazy because she didn't play a lot of minutes her first 2 years. But Sanaya Fagan can be as good as anyone in the league in the post. She was just playing behind Aaliyah Boston her first 2 years, and Camilla Cardoso, and now she's getting more opportunities, and I think you're going to see some more from her. But you're right, you want to see how the team's going to perform, especially when someone like Camilla gets in foul trouble. We saw a game earlier this year, actually one of the games a couple of weeks ago, or in the last week or so, where she got 2 fouls early in the game and basically couldn't play the rest of the half. So it was just the last game against Ole Miss, so they got a little taste of that, of playing without Camilla for much of the first half against Ole Miss. Had to have other people in there, so you want that chemistry to be there and not have it be a new thing. And then when she comes back, then boom, you're back to being you again. But again, you'll have a couple of tough tests. Obviously, another conference game at home here on Thursday against Missouri, and then you got a big challenge on Sunday with Connecticut coming to town.
Brad Muller, play-by-play voice of the South Carolina Gamecocks, also official halftime adjuster.
Yeah, I wish that was all me making halftime adjustments, but you don't want me in there giving a pep talk because I'd be useless.
You'll come in and go, it reminds me of when I was playing rugby. Everybody gather around.
Yeah, I'll tell you about my lucky socks, and that's about it. That's all I got.
Right. By the way, how bad do they smell, Brad?
I've been washing them. Don't you worry. The tricky part is tournament time because you don't have a lot of time between games. You got to find more than one pair of good socks.
Yeah, you got to keep wearing them, and tournament time that could get uncomfortable, Brad Muller. I'm just saying.
Well, just uncomfortable for the people next to me. That's why I work alone, I guess.
Hey, my friend, we always appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
All right, we'll see you. That's Brad Muller, play-by-play voice of the South Carolina Gamecocks. And again, not having Cardozo, you should win your next one. And really, look, UConn is not the typical version of UConn. They're not.
Sure.
They're not looks like they're not a team that's running for a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're not a top 5 squad. Yeah, they have Paige. She's still there, but they've had some issues this year, especially on the defensive end of the court. They're not the same team that they've been in the past. So you're getting a ranked team coming in UConn, but you're not getting a juggernaut coming in like they've been before.
Yeah, and as Brad mentioned, we saw glimpses of it on Sunday when Cardoso had to leave or go to the bench a little bit early because she got in early foul trouble there. We've seen this team in flashes without Camilla Cardoso out on the court for an extended period of time, so it's not necessarily a foreign thing. It'll be interesting to see how Dawn Staley, kind of goes about the starting lineup and who, if not one player or just a couple different players, kind of take on Cardoso's role against Missouri and UConn coming up.
Yeah, There is the one big difference in playing with her when she's in foul trouble is she's coming back in the game.
True.
When you don't have her because she's not there, she ain't coming back in the game unless she's flying in. Can you fly in after a tryout or a practice?
Right.
So it will be interesting to see how they play the full 40, knowing that they don't have her. But they're very deep up front. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. All right, we'll get back in here. Firehouse Sub, text to the hour, 803-404-6100. It's a halftime show on the Game.
Georgia inbounds with 5 seconds left. They will walk it in the front court, and you can put Spurs on this one. Lamont Paris and Mike White share a long hug as the Gamecocks get the road win here in Athens. Your final score, South Carolina 72, Georgia 62. Another road win, Casey. We're getting used to this.
All right, there's Brad Muller on the call. South Carolina taking out Georgia over the weekend, now the 15th ranked team in the country. So real quick, let's spend a few minutes with David Eckert from the Clarion Ledger in Oxford. David, we appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you very much.
No problem. Happy to be on.
Real quick, if you just look at stats and numbers with Ole Miss, 30th in offensive efficiency, hitting about 38% of their threes as a team. It feels like an offensive team that, for a Chris Beard squad, struggles with defensive consistency. Of course, Beard will fix that as he moves forward from year one. Is it a team that's really good on offense, but sometimes kind of falls asleep defensively?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. They have 4, I think, really talented scorers in their starting lineup. They've got some good scoring depth on the bench as well, but, they just, for whatever reason, the defensive end of the floor hasn't really clicked for them, and really, they're having a really hard time rebounding the ball too, and that's a major issue as well.
Yeah, South Carolina's a pretty solid offensive rebounding squad, and that's where Ole Miss struggles, is preventing offensive rebounds, correct?
Yep. Yeah, if you look at what Auburn did to them over the weekend, just got after them on the boards, and really that even happens in games that they win. Like, it's just kind of a given that, they're going to give up double-digit offensive rebounds. It's just a matter of, can they score enough to counteract that.
David Eckert hanging out with us from the Clarion Ledger in Oxford, talking Ole Miss hoops here on the halftime show on the game. All right, Jamarian Sharp's like 11 foot tall. Okay, 7'5". And he is the major rim protector, obviously, for Ole Miss. Missed the Auburn game with an illness. It was non-COVID related. Any update on Jamarian Sharp's status for tonight?
No, we're going to wait and see for tonight and see whether he warms up. But, gut feeling, illness, you kind of expect him to be out there. But, no, I don't have any hard news on that one yet.
All right. If South Carolina wins this basketball game, they have to fill in the blank for me against Ole Miss.
They've got to limit the three-point shooting, and they've got to take care of the basketball and get after them on the offensive glass. Right. The one thing that Ole Miss can do that kind of erases all of the other problems and papers over the cracks is occasionally they'll go out and they'll make 15 threes, and that's just the end of it, right? So if you're South Carolina, you can't let that happen, and you gotta attack the weakness, right? And that's the boards. So I think you do those two things, you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
All right, last thing for you, and I appreciate you jumping on a short notice for us. Last thing, if South Carolina's got to stop one guy on the Ole Miss squad offensively, who do they have to shut down?
I'm going to go with Juju Murray, the point guard, because Ole Miss has some guys, right? Matthew Morrell's the leading scorer. He's going to get hits. But if you kind of make it a hard night on Juju, he'll give the ball away a little bit. They depend on him to make threes. So if he's not doing that, they're not really getting their secondary scoring. Defending the point guard spot, I think, will be a key for South Carolina for sure.
And real quick in our lesson before I let you go, so far halfway through or a little bit over halfway through the first year of Chris Beard, I'm guessing the vibe is all good in Oxford, what Beard's done so far?
Oh, 100%. They just broke a record crowd. They had another sellout over the weekend, which, a year ago you're going into that building and falling asleep. So, I'm sure it's probably a similar vibe to what is going on up there right now. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally
I need a quiet place to study. Let's go to the Ole Miss basketball game. Oh, man. Very nice. David Eckert, Clarion Ledger, covering the Ole Miss hoop squad. David, again, short notice. I appreciate you jumping in, and we'll bug you down the road if you don't mind.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
That's David Eckert, Clarion Ledger in Oxford, giving us a little scouting report on the Ole Miss Rebels. We'll come back, get our Firehouse Sub text of the hour as we start football in the 1 o'clock hour, as we start digging into some different stuff. Some Shane Beamer sound also in the next segment, talking about injuries and maybe tweaking up the offseason plan. We got that from Shane in the next segment as well, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. It is the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We are running this sucker up until 3 here on The Game. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the Game in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach. 107.5 The Game app, Game TV. We've been fiddling with the Game TV cameras during the show, so oops.
You know, gotta make yourselves look good.
That's right. Well, as good as we can look. We're in radio for a reason. So we're hanging out doing football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the Game. And before we get to all that, though, our Firehouse subtext of the hour, which we had to move because we had David Eckert pop in for us to give us a little behind enemy lines sneak look at Ole Miss basketball, which again tonight 6 o'clock pregame 6:30 tip here on the Game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. So 803-404-6100 Firehouse subtext. What do you got there, my man?
Yeah, so speaking of tonight's game, Nameless Texter said, excited for tonight's game, need to make the CLA very loud. South Carolina's done a pretty good job of creating a good home environment, especially as conference play has gone on, and they've obviously picked up these big wins. And tonight's another example. If you have a very good team at Ole Miss coming in here, you need to make it as hostile of an environment as possible.
Is it a whiteout thing tonight?
Yes, tonight is the whiteout. That's right.
It's whiteout. I mean, everybody in white. So dig out your white gear and roll off to CLA. Are they giving out T-shirts?
I do not know about that, but I do know. So the last time they had the blackout, and of course Coach Paris wore the black quarter zip, and he's been winning with that thing. Does he stay with the black quarter zip, or does he change it up and go with the white one?
You superstitious people will stay with the quarter zip.
You gotta stay with it.
He's going to stay with it. Look, even Lamont admitted he's superstitious.
Now
he admitted that on the show on the morning show here.
Here's the funny thing about that, and look, I hope South Carolina wins tonight, but let's say. He wears the same quarter zip that's been winning, and they don't win. You in your mind, you justify that by something else you did was incorrect, and it wasn't the quarter zip that was the problem. You said, well, I wore the wrong shoes with the quarter zip, and that's why it wasn't lucky.
I'm getting a headache. You superstitious people give me a headache.
Listen, there's a lot of layers to it.
I was going to say,
I don't know how you go through your life without thinking of these things.
I'm not that deep a thinker. I don't want to be that deep a thinker. I drive myself nuts. If I lived in the world of superstition, I would drive myself crazy just like that. Well, maybe it wasn't the quarter zip. I did wear a different pair of socks. Usually I walk to the car on the driver's side first. Today I walked around the passenger side to get to the driver's side because I had to grab the mail. So probably, oh my God, you people are crazy.
There are certain days where I come away like, man, today's show went really well. And the next time I wear that shirt or jacket or whatever it is, that's what I think about. Well, last time I wore that, we had a good show. Let me make sure that happens again.
So basically, if you wear the same shirt 3, 4, 5 straight days,
you'll know.
It's not because you're out of laundry.
It's not. I have too many clothes, to be honest with you.
Just having this conversation, I've just got to go lay down. You superstitious people are whacked out. You really are. Thank God I don't do it.
You're not wrong.
It's just like Brad. Wearing the same socks. They're going to start to smell during the tournament. He goes, well, that's why I work alone.
Winning smells.
Yes, it does. So I think Lamont stays with the black quarter zip tonight because they're rolling.
Yeah.
And if you take it off, that means you lose because that's why. I'm entertained by you superstitious folks. But Lamont, I think, wears the black quarter zip tonight. He's on a roll. He's not going to change. He's going to go with it. But there's the total whiteout for the crowd. Yes, you want to get lathered up tonight just because you want to make this environment a very difficult place to play. That's just the bottom line. Whether you got to do whiteouts, blackouts, greenouts, blueouts, whatever you got to do, you just got to make this a very tough venue for the opposing team to come into. And it's so interesting, while we're talking about this, remember last year's environment?
For this game?
No, for the home games.
Oh, for the home games? Yeah, it wasn't
because you weren't special. Winning, and the team hadn't been to the tournament since the Final Four run in 2017. Look, it's not just South Carolina. In general, especially in our world today, Tyler, when we have so many things we can do, we got so many choices for entertainment. It's tough to drag yourself off consistently game after game after game to watch a losing team or watch a program that's been stuck in the mud for X amount of years. Look, Frank's teams weren't terrible. They were over 500, but they didn't make the tournament.
Right.
And it just, after a while, you get like, it's just human nature. It happens everywhere. My favorite team's a basketball school. When Maryland isn't really good, Guess what you see at the Xfinity Center at College Park, Maryland?
A lot of empty seats.
It's empty seat night sometimes because, again, you have a lot of choices in the DMV for professional sports, college sports. You know, you can go to 2 big cities and go do stuff. So you got to win to keep people's interest. And here, just the basketball team was in a funk.
Sure.
And now you've got something exciting going on, and that place is going to be packed tonight.
And for a place like Colonial Life Arena, which is bigger than a lot of venues around the SEC, when you don't have people there, it really shows up because you're trying to fill, 18,000 seats as opposed to 7,000, 8,000 seats some of these other places. So it feels even more empty, even if you may have the same as, like an Auburn or something like that.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, it just does because, to your point, it's big. And the empty seats look worse on TV because there's so many. And you might have, a lot of times you'll have more people than it looks like.
Sure.
Because just it's a bigger venue.
When they're spread out.
Right. So, again, and I think they don't care sometimes. Hey, come on down. Come on down here and fill up some seats. We don't care. But now the flip side of that, when you're winning, that place will be packed and loud. I mean, you see what it is with the women.
Yep.
And the men can get those kind of crowds too, especially now because it's such a great story. It's come out of nowhere. Really, they're kind of like becoming the darlings of college basketball this year because they're picked last in the conference or next to last, depending on which preseason poll you want to look at. And right now they're sitting tied for second in the SEC. And they're 15th in the country. Nobody saw it coming. And it is. And this story is going to gain traction nationally if they keep winning. And here locally, that's all. Let's go to a game. We got to go watch Lamont's team. Let's go watch the men. Men are really good. Hey, they're 15th in the country. Let's get some tickets. The student section, by the way, will be jacked.
Yes, they are, I believe, all sold out for tonight.
Yeah, they're going to be jacked. So this is just fun. And I know, Bill tells me about it, and I've talked to a few people, like, just when I'm out going about my life. And when you haven't won or there's always something that happens or you always fall short or whatever, you get that scar tissue.
Sure.
Okay, when's it going to go bad?
Well, that's why so many people after the Kentucky game, played Missouri that weekend, and after Tennessee last weekend playing Georgia this past week, you're like, all right, well, this can all be for naught if you go out there and lay an egg on Saturday. And they stepped up to the challenge both times and have been on a winning streak since that Georgia loss, which, again, you saw how different they played against them this past weekend. I would love to see them play Alabama again because I think that'd be a much more competitive matchup this time around because I think they learned so much from that bad half of basketball they played in the second half that they're a much better team since then.
I think that bad half of basketball changed their season.
Yeah.
And just watching them play since. The Georgia game, they lost because they didn't make free throws.
Right.
I mean, you go 17 to 32 from the line. You lost that basketball game because you just, weren't making your free throws. But they've been a different team, and they've played their way and their style for 40 minutes every game since Bama. Every game, they're not getting out of their lane. They're not trying to do what they shouldn't be trying to do. Again, I wasn't there. Lamont doesn't invite me to practice or film sessions. My guess is Lamont, because you heard him after that game. I don't know what we just were. I don't know what I just saw. That wasn't this basketball team. We haven't been like that all year.
Right.
I'm sure once they got back to practice and film study, Lamont probably basically put up the first half of that Bama game where you're down by 2 going in the locker room or down by 1.
1.
And that's the way you play. And you had befuddled Alabama. And that was a 20-something to 20-something at the half.
Mm-hmm.
It was perfect. It was perfect for South Carolina to pull an upset in the second half. Then you came out, you got out of your lane. Oh, Alabama, you're shooting wild threes. Watch us. Oh, you want to run down the court a little bit? Okay, we'll do that with you. Hey, let's talky with each other. South Carolina was totally not the same basketball team in the second half. I'm sure Lamont put that up on the big old screen, and they watched that. After they watched the first half, they said, "Are we clear who we are now?" And since that second half of basketball, they have been one team playing one way. And we've seen what's happened.
Right.
It's been fantastic. So It will be packed tonight, and it will be loud. And a good basketball team's coming in from Oxford. A team those struggled on the road in the SEC at 1-3. Chris Beard's Ole Miss Rebels. We heard David Eckert from the Clarion Ledger in Oxford. They make threes. They're a good offensive team. Defensively, and they have a real tough time keeping you off the offensive glass. I think that's the recipe right there for South Carolina to pull a win. Is Ole Miss defensively, 120, 143rd in the country in efficiency, and B, one of the worst teams in defending the backboard and preventing you from getting offensive rebounds. So I think that's where it's going tonight.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And again, South Carolina very good on the offensive rebounding themselves. And as we talked about, just go out there and play your game. And yes, Ole Miss isn't a team that's going to run up and down the court on you. So they're a little bit of that similar slow tempo of basketball. But, like they've done with every single team, turn into a physical game of basketball and, win in the paint. And we'll see if South Carolina can do that tonight and keep this hot streak going.
All right, as we now pivot, we appreciate the text on the Firehouse Up text line 803-446-100. Football. We're going to listen to some Shane Beamer here in just a minute. Shane, Friday talked before Joe D, the new special teams coach, got up and spoke with the media. A couple things Shane talked about we want to circle back to because we didn't really get into it because we were so focused on Joe D. So we're going to get back here some Shane Beamer. Shane, talking about the injury situation because, he introduced some of the players and some dudes were, wow, why is that guy in a boot? Why does that guy have a sling? So Shane had to, talk about it Friday. So we'll get Shane's thought on the injury issues with the team and also the offseason program. What are you tweaking? What did you maybe learn from after going with your 8-win season, then you had your disappointing 5-win season? Are you tweaking some things in the off-season program because, A, you just evolve as a coach, or B, because maybe you look back and say, maybe there's some things we want to do differently than we did last offseason? So we'll hear from Shane in the next segment. Football, brought to you by Atlantic Windows and Doors, AWDSC.com. For 40 years, Atlantic Windows and Doors, giving you the best quality and the best variety of windows and doors in the Midlands. Atlantic Windows and Doors sponsoring football. We'll get in here. Check out some Shane in the next segment on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on The Game. All right, if you're looking maybe to get a new refrigerator, set up a new stove, maybe you just want to, redo your kitchen. Maybe you got some plumbing issues you want to improve. Maybe there's electrical, lighting. You want to just kind of set the tone of the house different. One place to go. That's the Nest. We're on Gadsden at 1331 Gadsden. Phone number is 803-978-2025. You set an appointment. Here's why you set an appointment. You don't do this stuff over the phone. Because the Nest has experts, lighting experts, plumbing experts, kitchen experts, appliance experts who will sit down with you, talk about what you're looking for, what's your budget, how you want to set everything up, and then they will put a plan together that benefits you and sets you up for being happy with your home. Again, 803-978-2025. Nikki and Graham do a phenomenal job setting everything at the Nest. Talk to some experts at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden. Get it taken care of. Football in the 1 o'clock hour here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head hanging around with you. All right, we want to spin back to Shane Beamer on Friday, just talking about a couple different things with the media before he handed everything off to Joe DeCamillis, the new special teams coach. Let's spin back, Tyler. First of all, Shane talking about the health of some of his players, Rocket Sanders, Cam Pringle, a couple guys have had some offseason stuff that they've had to get taken care of, and here's Coach Beamer discussing it.
No, nothing new from last week. Again, we got some guys that are pushing to get back. We do have some guys out there right now, David, that are limited as well, but no one new. I'll probably have a more thorough injury report for you as we get closer to spring practice. But all those guys some of the guys that are limited right now are going to be cleared next week. And Rocket right now is probably the one, I don't want to say long term, but the one that won't be ready for spring practice, but we'll see as the spring goes.
So, I mean, look, here's what matters. Ready? They're ready for August 31st against Old Dominion. That's what matters. And at the end of the day, you just want dudes healthy for when it's go time. Whether they miss spring ball, they miss part of, summer camp, whatever. Obviously, you want guys healthy and ready to go and practiced and repped up and all that, but you just want the healthy, important guys to be ready on August 31st.
And Rocket Sanders is obviously somebody we've seen his body work in the SEC when he's at full health. So, him not playing in the spring game, I don't think you're going to be going in there wondering, I wonder what he would look like within this offense. Like,
right.
We have a pretty good idea of what he's going to be able to do. So, yeah, give him as much time as he needs. And when he's ready and healthy to go out there and start going to 100%, that time will come. But, I don't think you're really going to be missing anything with not having him running through the spring practice. He'll still be engaged. He'll be a part of, all the team stuff and, should be ready when the fall rolls around.
He'll be fine, it seems like. And right now, that's what matters. I mean, spring game is, look, you want to see, it's cool to see guys in the spring game, especially as you haven't seen them before, wearing the garnet and black and all that. I get it. But really the goal is be ready to go August 31st against Old Dominion. That's what matters. Also, Shane brought up maybe some possible tweaks in the program as in the off season, things that they do in their process. And here's Coach Beamer.
No, I think you're always tweaking and adjusting and looking back at how we can be better. And that's in every department, weight room, coaching, nutrition, training room, equipment, you name it. You're always looking at how we can improve. And it was the same way 2 years ago when we won 8 games, and it was the same way last season as well. From a weight room standpoint, we've tweaked some things that we do lift-wise, maybe added some new things, doing a little bit less of stuff. I think Luke and his staff are doing a really good job of explaining the why that we do things, why we're doing this, how it relates, and it's all that culture, whatever you want to call it, starts in the weight room, and it's a race to build that before the start of the season in August when we start practice and the first game as well. And that all starts in the weight room. So we're trying to do as much of that as we can, the communication, the leadership, along with getting stronger and bigger and faster like every team wants to. But essentially a little bit more of this, maybe a little bit less of some stuff, and really hopefully doing a better job of explaining the why. Not that we didn't before, I'm not saying that, but just making sure our guys all understand here's what this is developing and teaching a lot more too.
It's interesting. He says we want to make sure they understand the why. Because maybe sometimes, look, we all do it.
Sure.
I remember like when you're a kid, parents look at you. Go take out the trash. Why? Go clean your room. Why? Go do this. Why? Go do that. Why? Why got to do that stuff? Because we were all like, man, leave me alone and just let me do what I want to do.
Sure.
And so sometimes when you're explained why, you go like this. Okay, I get it. And you're more in, right? You're more invested. You buy in more. Not to say these guys weren't buying in or they weren't invested, but sometimes that takes you to an extra level or adds an extra layer because now you get why.
Did you ever have that friend, like in math class, that would ask the teacher, where's this going to apply later on in my life?
Oh, absolutely.
And the teacher would say, well, you're going to use this, this, and that when you're however many years old doing this, this, or that. And maybe that didn't resonate with everyone, but when you give them a tangible example of, hey, here's where you're going to apply this later on down the road, specifically talking about football here, why are we doing this workout? Why are we doing things this way? Because when you're in this situation, when you're in this game, it's going to benefit you in this way. And, again, you're talking about 18 to 22-year-old kids who may not have the grandest scope of what's coming down the line. But when you can help them visualize that, saying, here's why we're doing this, here's why we're doing it this way, here's what's going to benefit you down the line, not to say that's going to motivate them to want to do it more, but it can help them kind of understand why they're doing something and how it's going to benefit them.
And the other thing, too, like sometimes you take for granted explaining why because you figure, okay, you know why.
Yeah. Well, because you as the coach or the strength and conditioning guy, whoever it may be, you understand and you just may assume everybody else understands, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, assuming always gets you in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. And like for an example, you bring up the math. And when I was in high school, back in that little house on the prairie schoolhouse in the 1800s, when I was in high school, the world of technology and science and mathematics hadn't blown up like it has now.
Sure.
And back then, you're taking algebra going, what the heck am I doing? Why am I taking this? No, I'm not going to sit in a job interview and they're going to go, we're really impressed with you. Now here's 4 algebra problems.
Hey, where's the numbers? I didn't know we were adding A plus B.
Yeah. I don't want this letter crap in my math. And it's true because, as you got older, how many times have you applied algebra in your job?
Not many.
So back then you're sitting here going, why am I doing this? This is a waste of my time. I loved math till algebra.
Yeah. Oh, the easy stuff. Right?
Algebra, I'd do 2 trains leave Chicago all day long.
Sure.
Algebra cratered me. I was like, why in God's name am I doing this? It makes no sense. They're giving me the answers in the back of the book because they want to see how I get the answer, not the answer.
Sure.
This is whacked out.
I had a friend who, asked that question to the teacher one time, and, she went on to explain, you're going to use this, this, and there. And she asked the question, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? His name was Dylan. And he said, I want to be a UFC fighter. And she paused for a moment. She's like, well, if that's the case, maybe you don't need this. Spoiler alert, he didn't grow up to be a UFC fighter.
I say, what did he grow up to be?
I think he's a mechanic.
Well, he didn't need algebra.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, you're working on cars, you don't need stinking algebra. Like here, we don't need stinking algebra in radio. But yeah, algebra was why are we doing this?
I understand.
Yeah, why am I cutting up a frog in biology? Am I going to go home and slice a family member?
I once I got into high school and college, I prefaced every teacher. I'm like, look, I'm not good at this. I'm going to try, but if it looks like I'm just writing down chicken scratch, it's because I don't really know.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, sometimes explain or going out of your way to explain the why is helpful. So that's what Shane was discussing there. I will get back in here on the halftime show, football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Guess what's going on this week? Yeah, it's Super Bowl week. You know what that means? Media Day. Not as crazy and kooky as it used to be. They've kind of sucked the fun out of it. COVID really took it in a different path.
Sure.
Roger Goodell spoke. His presser, we got some Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Brock Purdy, and a little Debo in there too. So we're going to run around the Media Day circus in the next segment, and so you can hear what is being yapped about before the big game on Sunday. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Do not forget, you can get in on our Valentine's Day contest. Just go to 1075thegame.com. Balls and Strikes Valentine contest. Just qualify real quick, fill out the little form, hit submit. You can go to all 3 games opening weekend for South Carolina, February 16th, 17th, 18th against Miami of Ohio. Also a couple nights at the Hilton Garden Inn. That includes breakfast and a pregame meal and all that from Hilton Garden Inn and the Gamecocks. Just go there and fill it out. We're going to draw our winner on Friday. So jump into that. A romantic Valentine's weekend with the Gamecocks. All right, we'll come back in. Here's some Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy and Debo Samuel going to the NFL Super Bowl week Media Day next on the halftime show on the game. Halftime show. What we're talking about is football. Brought to you by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Here in the 1 o'clock hour on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. All right. So media day yesterday, not what it used to be. Media day used to be crazy.
Well, I feel like in years past that, I guess since COVID, they probably limited credentials down a little bit to where it's not everybody being there on opening day.
See, COVID gave you an excuse to limit access to all sports.
That's true.
And you've noticed, access has come back, but not like it used to.
Right.
So that's NFL Super Bowl Media Day. It's just, you had, few people from all over the place coming in asking crazy questions that were hilarious. You had all sorts of. Remember, David Letterman's mom went there and asked questions Super Bowl week.
Well, that's the thing is like the opening night media where they had the whole like the stage and all that where it's like a show essentially coming out there. You're not expecting like any hard hitting answers. That's for later on in the week. Like this is truly the one to answer the ridiculous questions, the silly stuff, sound bites, and all that kind of stuff. Kind of an icebreaker, really, for what the week is ahead.
I know that people who cover the game get annoyed with Super Bowl Media Day because it's sort of like. As you get older, you hear this line about New Year's Eve. That's amateur hour. That's amateur night. And I think the media guys who cover the sport look at the Super Bowl Media Day.
Yeah.
Okay, amateur hour. Here we go.
So it's really funny. When I was in school, I graduated in 2019. The Super Bowl's in Atlanta, spring of or February of 2019. They let the introduction class for sports media go to Super Bowl Media Day a year after my class. We didn't do anything on the opening day. Like they went to freaking Super Bowl Media Day and we're like, why are you letting the new kids go? Why not us that have been doing this for a year? But they let them go, and there was pictures of them asking like Tom Brady questions and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, what the heck, man? I was a year late.
And you're like, we got seniority. We've got the seniority on this mess.
You would think.
So Patrick Mahomes, everybody talked. And Travis Kelce obviously had like a crew around him. And look, make no mistake, Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame tight end.
Sure.
But Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame, what's the way I want to say this to be nice? Media hoarder. Travis Kelce loves this.
Well, he's not shy.
No, and again, Kelce started. Remember, he had that reality show a few years ago.
Yeah.
Him and his brother do a podcast, which, by the way, if you ever actually pay attention to it, is pretty good.
I enjoy it.
It's really pretty good. And really, his brother Jason. I'd rather hear Jason than Travis. Not to be mean, I like Jason because he's authentic. I think Travis is kind of a guy who's playing himself up. I think Jason's a very authentic dude, and he is who he is.
Jason is unintentionally very funny.
Yes. I like Jason Kelce. So Travis he craves the spotlight. That's the way I want to put it. Craves the spotlight. And he's getting a lot of it these days because of...
He just happens to be dating,
Taylor
international
Swift.
Pop star.
Yeah. So here's Travis Kelce. And this is talking about... First of all, let's get him talking about wanting this Super Bowl more than the others.
I've been on a mission ever since I won my first Super Bowl. We made it back to the Super Bowl the year after 2019. Obviously lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's motivated me to get back to this point right here. So you'll hear me say this a lot, but I want this one more than I've ever wanted a Super Bowl in my life. And it's because the type of team we have, the people that we have in this thing, but also because that tier of teams that have done it twice have gone down in history as some of the greats.
I mean, yeah, you went back to back. It hasn't happened since the Patriots over a decade. This is I think I heard this yesterday. This is the longest period of time between back-to-back Super Bowl champions. So maybe we're due. And I get what Kelce's saying about the team because this team, look, it's lost 6 games this year. In December, they got punked by the Raiders. But since that punking at the hands of the Raiders, Chiefs haven't lost a game. And the people around the organization, the people that cover them, say that loss made them reassess, hey, you know what? We're not the team we were in past seasons. We're not explosive like we were. We can't rely on the offense to bail us out. We've got to play more complementary football, and we've got to play to who we are. And Since then, they haven't lost. Their defense is the best defense in the Patrick Mahomes era.
Right.
They're good on special teams. They can run the football. And no, they're not as explosive in the passing game as they've been, in the Mahomes era, but they do a lot of things better than they used to. And they realized that after getting beat by the Raiders and said, you know what? We've got to play to the team we have now and not try to play like our past teams.
And while they've not been certainly the best out of the prior 3 teams that went to the Super Bowl, the experience in the playoffs, I think, helped them out a ton. And you saw that obviously playing the other week, against the Ravens. They're just a team that had been there and done that before, and that goes a long way, with playing your 18th, 19th, or 20th game in the season. And I think that's going to benefit them greatly going to the Super Bowl. And I brought this up the other day. It was only 4 years ago, but there's only 12 combined returning starters between these two teams, 7 on San Francisco's side and 5 on Kansas City's side. So you have a lot of turnover from that Super Bowl matchup back in 2020. So it's not able to say, well, San Francisco's been there before. A lot of these guys haven't, but a lot of these guys on Kansas City have been in the past couple of Super Bowls.
Well, it's just with Kansas City, and you saw it in the win over the Bills and win over the Ravens. When you're a championship team and you have a championship culture, guys all have that, it's like that superpower in them.
Sure.
To step, guys you've never heard of in your life step up and make plays.
Right.
Guys you would never think are going to be difference makers make a difference. We talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling this year, one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL all year. Against the Bills, made 2 big plays down the field. Against the Ravens, made a huge play down the field to seal the game. This dude, honest to God, he couldn't fall out of a boat and hit water all year. He was known for drops all year, for disappearing all year. And all of a sudden, when it mattered the most, he woke up and made big plays. That's just a championship culture. I've said this. I'm going to pick the Chiefs. You know why? Because they're the Chiefs.
Right.
I'm rooting for the 49ers, obviously.
Sure.
But until you slay the Chiefs, and Tampa did it a couple years ago, but let's be fair. The Kansas City offensive line was totally jacked up with injuries, and Patrick Mahomes ran for his life for 4 quarters.
Yep.
Not to say if the offensive line is healthy, they beat Tampa Bay, but Kansas City was playing with one hand tied behind their back that day. After watching the Chiefs, what they did against the Bills and the Ravens, coming off of winning the Super Bowl last year, until you beat them, I'm not picking against them, dude. I'm just not.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah, all right, let's get another. And this is the most important comment from Travis Kelce, though. Forget X's and O's. Forget game plans. Forget legacies. Let's talk about, hey, Travis Kelce, what would be your wrestler name?
My wrestler name? I don't know. Maybe the Big Yeti? I don't know. The Big Yeti. You don't want to see the Yeti.
That's what Media Day's for.
Yes. Probably got asked by the freshman media class from University of Georgia.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd go all the way out to Vegas, but maybe the UNLV Sports Media, which, by the way, the fact that we're having a Super Bowl in Las Vegas,
Oh, yeah.
How far sports have come in just that past handful of years where no league would have any association with the city of Las Vegas or gambling for that matter, but then they realize we can make how much money if we, have DraftKings as our official sports betting partner? Oh, yeah, let's do that.
You know what the NFL loves more than winning?
Money.
Money. The top 3 things the NFL cares about in order: money, money, and money.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they said, wait a minute, this stuff's starting to become legal. You know how much dough we could make off of this? Absolutely.
And they are.
It's like the state of California. Oh, weed is legal? You know how much money we can make off of this?
Well, think about it for so many years when, proposals for, hey, put a sports team in Las Vegas. There's no way they would do that. Well, the Golden Knights, successful. Aces, successful. Raiders, successful. A's about to go there and be successful. It's just turning into another city. Oh, by the way, it just happens to be the gambling capital of the world.
Tyler, all those degenerates and gangsters and all those weirdos they're gonna infect everyone, and they're gonna, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Think of the children. Oh no, yeah.
As long as you're not doing it within your facility or team facilities doors, you're fine. But even guys can't follow that rule. Apparently,
it's interesting. By the way, I'm going to try to get to this, if not today, tomorrow. There's some people who went back to some old Roger Goodell transcripts about gambling.
Oh, yeah.
And they've totally okey-doked Raj. It's pretty funny. We'll try to get to that today, if not tomorrow. All right, Brock Purdy also talking to the media, the 49er quarterback. Cut 8, Brock Purdy talking about he was drafted last in the NFL draft for a reason.
No, I'm not. Yeah, honestly, I'm not that kind of guy. I know a couple of the guys that got drafted before me, but I've never held a grudge for it or anything. I'm a believer that God has a plan for everybody, and I fell last for a reason. And so I haven't held any grudges against other teams. It all happened how it needed to, and I'm blessed to be part of the 49ers.
Like Tom Brady can tell you every quarterback that was drafted ahead of him.
Oh, yeah.
Dak Prescott has his draft spot tattooed on his arm. Brock Purdy's like, look, everything happens for a reason. I'm all right. I'm in a good spot. All right, last thing real quick from this. Patrick Mahomes, this is really good. Cut 5, talking about his six-pack.
Another Super Bowl for sure. I have a six-pack. It's just dad bod. So it's just, if you feel, I mean, there might be some skin there, but then underneath that, the six-pack's there. You just got to get real close, and you got to squint a little bit, and I think you'll see it.
He's just protecting it.
Well, you put a layer over that six-pack with that dad bod, make it a little chunky, so that way you protect your six-pack from any kind of harm.
Hey, that's protecting the investment.
Patrick Mahomes, a deep, deep thinker. All right, there's some stuff for Media Day at the Super Bowl. We'll get back in here. Firehouse Sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. We continue to talk football, and more football on the halftime show on the game, brought to you by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Time to hit the old Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Yeah, so nameless texter informs us that Lamont Paris's white quarter zip is actually 1-0 this season. There's that little counter of people that have his different quarter zips and what the respective records are. So if he needs to wear a white one for tonight in the whiteout,
he's good.
It is undefeated up to this point,
All
so
right,
that's
well,
good to know.
Thank you, texter. We appreciate that at 803-404-6100. Now we know. He also is undefeated. Whatever he wore for the 3 losses, burn that stuff. Just burn that stuff. But I do. Look, I have friends who are superstitious. Our buddy there, Tyler Head's massively superstitious. Lamont's superstitious. He's told a great story during one of the post-game shows with Derek after a win that he has friends who he won't give tickets to because when they've come to games, his teams have lost. So he's like, no, man, when you show up, you're bad luck. And so some of those friends, as Lamont was telling the story, they're like, they come to games. They're like, oh, come on, let me come to a game. They'll come to a game against a weak non-conference opponent so they can be there for a win so they can get more tickets. That's weaseling the system. I like it. But, I mean, like if you're superstitious, hey, go get them. Like I said, we were talking about that earlier in the show. My head was hurting. I don't want to think that hard. I'm not a superstitious man at all. But I'm surrounded by people who are. The people who, I've got this one around me too. The don't say it out loud people because everything will change. Like if things are going, like if let's say you go like this, go, man, we haven't any problems with that washer and dryer. We haven't had a problem with that washer and dryer in a while. Way to go. What? You had to say that out loud? Oh yeah, I'm just, no. You had to say it out loud. You know what's going to happen now, don't you? What? Washer and dryer are going to break. Way to go. It'll be your fault. I like that one too. Don't say it out loud, crowd. So anyway, all right, appreciate the text at 803-404-6100. I think it's cool that there are people who are keeping the 1-loss record of South Carolina in comparison to the quarter zips that Lamont wears. So very nice. And this is fun. Look, you do what you want. I don't tell people how to think. So anybody tell me how to think. But I would just enjoy this. This is just such a fun ride with men's basketball. And you couple what's going on with the men's team with the constant excellence of what Dawn does with the women's team. And this is a very cool basketball season. It just is. And when you have an unexpected run the way the men are, where you're shocking the world and you were picked last or next to last, and now you're second place, a half game back of Bama, tied for second. You're arguably the surprise team in America. Yeah, just enjoy the ride. Didn't expect it anyway. Let's see where it goes. This team, they've got some games against, solid to good to quality opponents. The rest of the year, SEC's tough, man. When you think about it, South Carolina's lost one road game in the conference. They've taken out Tennessee on the road, Mississippi State on the road, Arkansas on the road, got the road win against Georgia. And Arkansas is a dumpster fire this year. Absolutely. But Mississippi State's a solid basketball team. Georgia's a solid basketball team. And obviously Tennessee was a top 5 squad before the Gamecocks went in there and cracked the Volunteers upside the head. This team's been good on the road. They got in conference. Out of conference, you got the loss at Clemson, then you got the one home L against Georgia. It's been fun. Watching this team grow through the year has been a blast. Because now they're connected on both ends of the court, whether it's making extra passes for easy hoops on offense or grinding on defense. They're in their lane. And not to say they're not going to lose any games this point on. Chances are, of course, they are. But this has just been a lot of fun. Really has been. I give a ton of props, again, to Lamont, the coaching staff, the players. It's been just a good ride. And hopefully it'll continue rolling. And this team plays a tempo that, that tempo and that pace just, some squads get bothered playing against that tempo and pace. They just do. And again, Bo Ryan played slow at Wisconsin. That's where Lamont Paris obviously, cut a lot of his bones with Bo Ryan at Wisconsin. And the Wisconsin tempo and pace and the way they played, it would be a problem for teams. And, South Carolina is starting to trend in that direction of playing a pace and tempo that most of the opposition, they won't play that way. So it's been fun. It's just absolutely been fun. And we thank you again for your text on the Firehouse Sub text line 803-404-6100. We'll come back. What's trending at 2 here on the game? Paul Feinbaum was on our sister station, Jocks in Birmingham, talking about the ACC and the Big 12. Are they falling behind the SEC and the Big 10? Now, the SEC and the Big 10, they're becoming boys. We'll get into that next and what's trending at 2, and also reset tonight's game with Ole Miss and South Carolina on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, we're hanging here on the game. The Men's Clinic of South Carolina, 803-875-MENS. Look, if you just don't feel like you don't feel right, you feel off, you forget where you sit stuff, you don't sleep like you used to, your exercise stinks, your recovery stinks worse than your exercise, you just don't have any life drive, professional drive, sex drive, just drive in general. The only thing you want to drive is your butt to the couch. It could be just low testosterone. It's one way to find out. Make the phone call to the Men's Clinic in 803-875-MENS. Set up a free confidential consultation with Dr. Dan and the staff. They'll talk to you. They'll actually listen. If they think it could be low testosterone, they'll put you through some lab work. And if it is low T, they'll put you on a program to get you feeling like you again. It could just be low testosterone. Find out. Call the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we roll till 3. Then the postgame show with Jane Elijah will take over here on the game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. Also, 107.5 The Game app and Game TV. All right, we do What's Trending at 2, brought to you by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. We are looking at what's trending is tonight, 6 o'clock pregame, 6:30 tip. South Carolina at home facing Ole Miss. 18-4 Rebs, started the year 13-0, 5-4 in the league, 1-3 on the road in the SEC. Ole Miss, they're positive as they can shoot some threes. They're hitting 38% from three. And they got two guys in Matthew Morello, I think's been there about 20 years. And Juju Murray or Jalen Murray, the point guard. Morello hits almost 39% from three. Murray hits 43% of his threes. It'll be interesting with Talon Cooper and Michi Johnson against the backcourt of Morrell and Murray. But, you know, Ole Miss has other guys who can hit threes as well. So it's not just two dudes. They're a good three-point shooting team. They don't shoot a lot of them, but they make them. You could make the argument they maybe should shoot more because they're so good at it.
Yeah, they're efficient for when they do shoot the three ball, and that's not something that South Carolina is foreign to facing this year. Look at Kentucky, look at Tennessee, two of the best three-point shooting teams in all the SEC.
You know, South Carolina's good versus the three. If you look at the opposing three-point shooting percentage.
Both of those teams shot the three well below what their usual average is, and even the other day against Georgia, who came out of the gate red hot, making 7 out of the first 10, made those adjustments in the second half, was able to slow them down. They only went 1 of 10 from beyond the arc in the second half of that game. So it's not something that South Carolina hasn't seen before. Again, a little bit more of a slower pace, slow tempo type of offense with Ole Miss, which probably contributes to why they don't take as many shots from three, just because they're not running up and down the court as much as some of these other teams are. So maybe a low scoring kind of slug it out type of game. But again, that's kind of one of those that South Carolina likes to play. And again, when you have the home environment, you mentioned Ole Miss being 1-3 on the road so far this season, that should hopefully play into the hands of South Carolina.
And with Ole Miss, you know, they don't turn the ball over a lot. Their assist-to-turnover ratio is really good. They're not, but the weakness, and this might be the difference in this game, is Ole Miss is not very good in preventing offensive rebounds. South Carolina is a good offensive rebounding team. That might be where the difference is with second-chance opportunities, second-chance points, putbacks, getting an extra possession where you can score. So watch, that will be a huge key in this game. And also with Ole Miss is will they or won't they have Jamarion Sharp, averages 2.6 blocks a game. Dude's 7'5". Sharp was sick and he missed the Auburn game. We'll see if Sharp plays. I mean, Sharp starts. He only plays like 17, 18 minutes a game, but he kind of does this with Sissy, the other big. They kind of rotate. But without Sharp, first of all, their best rim protector is out, and Ole Miss is not a good defensive team to begin with. Like I wrote it down here, 143rd in the country in defensive efficiency.
Yeah, but again, he's leading the SEC in blocks so far, and just being 7'5", obviously the presence he has down near the goal is something that's going to be missed for a team that does have good size. But man, you can't replicate 7'5" with anybody else. So I imagine they'll keep it close to the vest. We'll see if he goes out there and warms up tonight as our guy David, was talking about earlier in previewing the matchup. And South Carolina, I'm sure, has a game plan for if he's out there and if he's not out there. And we'll see what they ultimately end up deciding to do.
But if the Gamecocks can slow down the Ole Miss backcourt, that's a huge key. We talked to David Eckert from the Clarion Journal earlier in Oxford. Also in this basketball game, Ole Miss a good off. It's really weird. It's the opposite of a Chris Beard team. Typically, Chris Beard teams are really good on defense and can be a little clunky on offense. This team is 30th in offensive efficiency in the country. It's a good offensive team that goes to sleep on defense.
And I think that's kind of a nature because they did hit the transfer portal pretty hard this past season. They were actually, it's funny, South Carolina is the 22nd most experienced team in D1. They're the 23rd. So both teams very similar in that way, where Chris Beard went out there and brought in a lot of guys from the transfer portal. And I think when you kind of look at the sum of the talent that you have, you adapt it to whatever those guys are good at doing. And again, that kind of leans more into the offensive side of things based on what they have.
Yeah, I think as obviously it's Beard's first year, you got to get ramped up. But once he lays the foundation to it, they will be a much better defensive team. Now, will they be as good on offense? Probably not. But the defense will ramp up eventually in Oxford as he, gets more and more of his type of guys. But you're right. The transfer portal is such a wild card now. We see it at Arkansas. I mean, Eric Musselman brought in all these transfers. Musselman has a wonderful winning culture in Fayetteville. And this thing's a disaster.
Yeah.
Because, again, sometimes in life you bring a bunch of different people together and they all gel and bond. And sometimes you bring them all together and it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And this year it's been a dumpster fire for one of the best coaches in the country. So it just shows you, to your point of transfer portal, sometimes you have to adjust in ways you never thought you'd adjust.
Well, and that's why I think it's wise for people to really enjoy what's happening right now. And, we hope that Lamont Paris brings South Carolina a lot of success over the years to come. But so much changes from season to season. You just never know what next year and the next year are going to look like. So enjoy this run right now and however long it ends up lasting.
Yeah, I mean, for an example, and not to go ahead of the game, but you're going to have to replace Talon Cooper.
Yeah, that's big.
He is the quarterback. He is the pulse in a lot of ways of what they do and how he dictates the tempo and the pace of games. Obviously, he's been a knockout three-point shooter, and he's a calm captain of this ship. You're going to lose him. You got to replace him. You're going to have to replace Mack. You got to replace Studi. You got to replace Clark. You got, again, the transfer portal, they come in, and if they're only for 1 year, then you're replacing everybody again. Now, you hope eventually you lay a foundation of high school recruits or guys with multiple years of eligibility through the portal, and you can really start instilling some things to where you're not always having to replace a lot of guys from year to year. But anyway, enjoy it. It's fun. South Carolina night against Ole Miss, 6:30 pregame, 6:30 tip. All right, Paul Feinbaum, obviously on our sister station here, 1320 WISW, ESPN 1320. Paul Feinbaum was on our sister station in Birmingham, WJOX, and we've talked about it here. Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, and Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, have become boys.
Yes.
They are kind of putting together a professional bond because, again, it's smart. We are the big behemoths in college football. Instead of fighting each other, if we got together, think what we could do. Give me a wrestling tag team like that.
Ooh, maybe the two-man power trip, Stone Cold and Triple H back in the day, where
there
they
you go.
held every single belt imaginable at one time.
I mean, again, instead of fighting each other, why don't we get together and wipe out everybody? And what were they called again?
The two-man power trip.
I think that's what we got to start calling Petitti and Sankey, the two-man power trip.
There you go.
In suits.
Because, again, I think when you look at when Kevin Warren was at the Big Ten, it was anti-SEC and being against them and forming the dumb alliance thing that we all look back and laugh at. And I think Petitti and Sankey kind of looked at each other. It's like, we're kind of the top dogs in this game. If we work together, everybody would fall in line behind us, right?
Yeah, which goes back to how dumb was Kevin Warren. And I hate to be a name caller, but how dumb was Kevin Warren? And look at the damage Kevin Warren brought. Kevin Warren helped crater the Pac-12.
He did, and
look what he's done to the ACC too.
And I feel bad for Petitti when he took over last year. They didn't even finalize the NBC contract. People forget about that. Like Petitti had to come in and button up some of the final little pieces of that before that went into effect this past fall. Like Kevin Warren left it in not terrible shape, but rougher shape than it should have been before he bolted off to go, be with the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Warren formed that stupid alliance, and it knocked back the college football playoff for a year. If you don't do that, Southern Cal and UCLA and Arizona and Utah and everybody else in the Pac-12 stays because the playoff started.
Yep.
And that's what everybody wanted, access to the playoff. There might be a whole different mindset on the West Coast if the playoff would have started this past year with 12 teams.
Right.
Instead, it didn't because of Kevin Warren and his alliance, and it was one of the major factors in cratering the Pac-12. And this ACC stuff that's going on, a lot of it started because, again, you had an alliance just to go after the SEC because Kevin Warren scared everybody. And I think a lot of the damage that's going on in the ACC right now is because of the alliance. Just saying.
Definitely so.
All right, let's get to Paul Feinbaum on Jocks. First of all, Feinbaum was talking about the end goal for this possible ACC Big Ten partnership between the commissioners.
I think it's the future of the sport from a legal standpoint, because that's really the biggest threat. And Cole, we all hear this from people. We go, okay, what time's the game start? But ultimately, in court today, and I'm not speaking of Tennessee, there are serious cases that could determine the future of college athletics, and I think that's where the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to get on the same page. After that, yes, I think the CFP is extremely important because, why should the Pac-12 get a seat at the table with two teams? Why should we have to sit around and go, okay, well, are these really the best teams? Well, they're not, because we have a group of 5 in there, and we have one from every column. I mean, I want to see the best teams, as you guys do, and now we have a better chance moving forward of doing that because the Big Ten and the SEC hold all the important contracts. And I'm not really sure where the CFP is going from a television standpoint. There's been a lot of debate, but it seems like it's probably not going to move that far from where it's always been. But at least it's being done collectively. And I think it just takes, I hate to sound so basic here and say it takes leadership, but it does. And Kevin Warren, who led the Big Ten through a very difficult period of COVID and afterwards, it really felt like he was in a battle to try to be the best conference. And quite frankly, I think we know who the best conference is, and now there's no disputing who the 2 best conferences are. And I think collectively they're just a lot stronger.
Yeah, remember Kevin Warren handled COVID so well. The guy was a disaster. I mean, he got the TV deals and all that stuff. I'll give him credit.
That spring season worked out real good, didn't it?
Yeah, that was great. Good move, Kev. We'll come back and talk more about what Paul Feinbaum just brought up about the SEC and the Big Ten. And really, a lot of this is the future of college football and where it's going. And these 2 conferences have a lot of options because they're the big dog. We're going to get into that next one and continue on with Trending at 2, brought to you by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions, right here on the Halftime Show on The Game. Halftime show, What's Trending at 2, brought to you by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions as we roll till 3 here on the Halftime Show in the game. All right, so we played some Paul Feinbaum, Tyler and I, talking about the end game for this SEC Big Ten partnership between commissioners. It seems to be developing between Tony Petitti of the Big Ten and Greg Sankey of the SEC. It's just simple. I think Tyler hit it the best. It's like when Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H got together and said, you know what? We're bad dudes. So instead of fighting each other, if we get together with two bad dudes, nobody can screw with us. We're top dogs.
There you go.
It's very simple. Which one's Triple H and which one's Stone Cold?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because both of them are kind of more Triple H than Stone Cold. Because Stone Cold's a guy that would come in and hit you in the head with a beer bottle.
Yeah, Triple H, a little more
corporate,
cerebral.
As he is now.
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. Fire out subs text on 803-404-6100.
Which one's Stone Cold?
Which one is which as far as the SEC and the Big Ten go? That's a good question.
Yeah, I feel like, really neither is Stone Coldish, but if I got to pick one, Petitti seems a little bit more, even more buttoned up than Sankey.
Yeah.
Maybe Sankey Stone Cold with hair?
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
that's
Triple
a
H
tough
is bald now, so.
Yeah, what happened to that, man? Triple H had hair.
I think he may have started going bald and just said, you know what? Let's just commit to it.
Yeah, Triple H, I know the feeling. Just saying, I know the feeling. So, anyway, it's just smart. SEC, Big Ten, you get together, you're far and away the two biggest entities in college football. You can make the rules, you can run the show. And they're realizing this. So the power brokers of the sport, look, somebody's got to take this thing by the short hairs. Because this thing is a mess. The Dartmouth thing we talked about earlier, the Dartmouth, the regional NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, has ruled that the Dartmouth men's college basketball team can unionize, if you haven't heard this yet. So here we go with another layer to all the other layers about college athletics. Everything is nuts. It's crazy. It's like the purge.
Yeah.
Without killing people.
Right.
And it's one day of anarchy. Do whatever the heck you want. So somebody has got to understand where it's going and what you're going to have to do. And you're not going to like what you're going to have to do in some cases. But how do you make sense of the senseless?
Right.
And it's because right now no one's doing that. I'm sorry. Hey, new commissioner of the NCAA, Baker, you can go sleep in the halls of Congress.
Sure.
Congress is not saving you. It's like that movie where the damsel in distress is tied to the railroad track.
Yeah.
Well, the NCAA is a damsel. Guess who's not showing up to get her off the track? Congress.
Right.
It's just you got to stop with this and understand they're not saving you. They're not coming to get you. You got to figure it out yourself. And maybe Sankey and Petitti and those folks can start going down the road of understanding that and making sense. Well, and the sense might be to get the heck away from the NCAA to start with.
And they made a point when this was announced on Friday that, no, this is not them attempting to leave the NCAA right now. But whenever that day comes, well, guess what? They're probably going to be about 5 steps ahead of where they would be if they just tried to scramble it together at the last minute. And kind of turning this to the ACC and the Big 12 a little bit, I think if it came down to it, Big Ten and the SEC probably would be just fine with creating their own 34-team Super League as opposed to trying to incorporate these other two now lesser leagues into some 65, 70-team type thing.
Look, we know this, and some people will say it and some won't. It's not the Power 4.
No.
It's Power 2.
Yes.
That's what it is.
And then the other two. A half-ish,
right.
I guess.
Exactly. And it's just, look, all right, let's pretend we're Petitti and Stone. I'm losing my hair. I'll be Stone Cold. You can be Petitti. And I'll be whatever. You and I are sitting there, Sankey and Petitti. At some point, aren't we going to look at each other and go, this thing's going to hell in a handbasket?
Yeah, pretty much.
What are we going to do to fix it for our perspective to make this make sense? You want unlimited transfers all the time? You want NIL rules that make no sense? I don't want any of this. What are we going to do to fix it? Because obviously we can't lean on Baker and the NCAA because those guys they're hanging out in Washington, D.C.
Right.
We got to figure it out ourselves. You tell me that conversation hasn't happened?
Oh, definitely so. And that's what we've heard a lot, when you kind of look at or hearing the rumblings. We talked about Jeff Hafley, the other day leaving Boston College. There's these rumblings there could be a lot of other coaches coming down the pipeline in the next couple of years that are kind of fed up with the structure of college football right now and would rather go to the NFL or go sit at an ESPN desk and wait up for all this stuff to iron itself out. So, the high-level people within the sport are getting pretty sick of how things are going as of right now. And again, these conversations have probably been going on for a long time between the SEC and the Big Ten, finally saying, hey, let's come together, let's make something happen. And, whenever blank hits the fan, we're going to be ready for it.
Look, I'm all for NIL. I'm all for players being able to transfer. I'm all for all of it. I think players have gotten screwed over for a long time in college athletics. But you got to have some rules and regs.
Right.
You just have to. And how do you get that, Tyler?
Collectively bargain.
You collectively bargain. All right, here's Paul Feinbaum talking about this whole deal with the Big Ten and the SEC. How does that affect the ACC and the Big 12? Are they falling now even farther behind?
Yeah, I think it puts them behind in everything, Greg. We already know those leagues are behind where it really counts, and that's in generating income and revenue. But now it puts them really in an awkward position, and I think it further exposes how utterly stupid that decision was a couple of years ago by the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC to form that alliance, because that was supposed to solve a lot of problems. There would be mutual scheduling and collaboration. That was always interpreted as a move against the SEC because of what happened with Oklahoma and Texas, and spare you why the CFP was delayed a year as a result. But ultimately, that has come back to haunt, especially the ACC, because the Pac-12 really is no more other than a name only, and that's a league that really has to figure itself out. I live in that part of the country, and when I got here nearly 11 years ago, all I heard was, "Man, this is basketball country." Really? Did anyone know the Duke North Carolina game happened over the weekend? And I think that's really and I don't listen. I'm glad to see the SEC and the Big Ten do this. Yeah, there's tremendous rivalries, as we all know. But when you control the dollars and the minds of college athletics, you're really in a good spot. And instead of sitting around and arguing and going to court and yelling at the NCAA, these two leagues really are like really the right and the left in Washington, D.C. coming together and say, okay, we're going to get some things done finally.
Well, first of all, I hate to break the news to Paul, but there were people that did know Duke and Carolina.
I was going to say, I don't think that was the best example to use, but Paul Feinbaum does pay attention to basketball.
Nah, I don't care. He's a football dude. Yeah, the ACC and the Big 12 are falling behind, and they have fallen behind. They've been behind. Why do you think, teams want to get out? The only thing that's saving the ACC from being the Pac-12 in a lot of ways is the grant of rights.
Yes.
And
half the teams in the league want to leave.
Yeah, that's just the reality. Even though who knows where they're going to go, they just want to explore their options and get out of the ACC.
Paul brings up something very important, and that's why this collaboration at this time between the Big Ten and the SEC is so interesting, because they still haven't decided what the college football playoff is going to be outside of 2025. We have this 2-year fix. Temporary thing. It's either going to be a 6-6 model or a 5-7 model, but past that, it's wide open. We don't know what it is. There's no reason why the SEC and the Big Ten would vote for AQs, because if they don't, they could realistically hold 9, 10, maybe even 11 of the 12 college football playoff spots, because they have all the top teams in college football. And again, why would they sign off on letting the ACC and the Big 12 in as an AQ when they can get more of their own teams in there?
Here's the interesting part. Florida State went undefeated and didn't make the college football playoff because they weren't in the SEC or the Big Ten.
Right.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Florida State's in one of those two conferences. I don't care if they lost their first 7 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
If you're undefeated and you win the Big Ten or the SEC, you're in the college football playoff.
And now you look at how loaded both conferences are. Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC, Oregon, Washington. These teams go into the Big Ten. You're going to have a 9-3, let's say, Ole Miss or LSU team that might get in over an 11-1 FSU, maybe a 10-2 Clemson, just because the leagues are so tilted the other way.
Okay, we know that Clemson in the past has been a college football playoff participant multiple times.
Yep.
They're trying to figure it out right now, the new world. And, again, but, Dabo obviously has done fine work. Florida State feels like they're back. We'll see if they're back, but it feels like they're back. Those two teams are the are the biggest quote unquote brands in the ACC with either their success or their past success, right?
Sure.
What do they want to do real bad, Tyler? Get out.
That's right.
And in the Big 12 right now, there's some good programs in the Big 12. But name me the program that you can guarantee will be in the college football playoff next year.
There aren't any. I mean, look, Oklahoma's good. Oklahoma State's good for 9-10 wins a season, but they inevitably lose 2-3 games they have no business losing. Kansas State's in a good place right now. Kansas in a good place right now, but that's really a league. And look, basketball's a whole different story. We're not talking about basketball
league,
here,
right?
but they really don't have a national brand anymore in the Big 12.
So you have two teams in the ACC that have the ability to be like that, and they both want to get out, and nobody in the Big 12 really right now screams no-brainer college football playoff squad.
Pretty much.
Where's everybody at?
In the SEC and the Big 10.
Yes, sir. So that's some Paul Feinbaum. What's trending at 2, brought to you by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. By the way, Traditions Fine Jewelry, get free roses with your Valentine purchase, $149 or more purchase, get some free roses. So not only do you have a really cool piece of jewelry for Valentine's Day, but then you go, hey, honey, look, got you some roses too. Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions sponsoring what's trending at 2 here on the game. We'll come back. Wow, today is February 6th. What is that, Tyler?
It's the greatest day in the history of the world.
Brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. That is next on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head here on the game. All right, time to hit the greatest day in the history of the world, which today is February the 6th. I always love these, Tyler. On this day in 1958, Ted Williams signs a contract with the Boston Red Sox, making him the highest paid player in Major League Baseball history. Want to give it a shot?
1958. $80,000 annually?
$17.25 an hour. No, I just made that up. A lot higher than you think, $135,000.
Oh, wow.
Six figures.
Wait, hold on. 1958?
1958 at $135,000.
Let's do some inflation math here.
Go for it.
1 second.
Go for it. I always love these because that's the first thing we think. All right, let's see what it would be today. And typically today, it's nothing like the highest paid guys in their sport get. My guess it's probably in the 3-4 million range.
All right, hold on.
Possibly. Maybe a little bit more.
1.4, actually.
All right, so I overestimated. So today you're pulling 1.4 million. Think about the inflation of contracts in Major League Baseball.
It's insane.
The highest paid player in Major League Baseball, is he making 1.4 million a day?
And at bat at this point.
So Ted Williams, highest paid player in Major League Baseball in 1958.
Bobby Bonilla is getting about that much every single year on July the 1st.
Yeah, just by going out and just checking his direct deposit on his phone.
Best deal in sports history.
Oh, it's phenomenal. This day in 1967, Muhammad Ali successfully defended his World Heavyweight Championship with a 15-round decision over Ernest Terrell at the Astrodome in Houston. Muhammad Ali would fight one more fight after that, also in 1967, beating Zora Foley. And then from March 22nd, 1967 until October 26th of 1970, over 3 years, in the prime of his career, by the way, when Ali won the fight over Foley, Muhammad Ali was just had celebrated his 25th birthday a couple months before. Did not jump in the ring again till he was almost 29 years old. The prime of Muhammad Ali gone over the whole issue about the draft.
Right.
It's just a shame. And who knows how even greater the Ali career would have been in the ring if he didn't lose us over 3 years.
Well, that's the crazy thing. Even with that gap in his career, he's still the greatest of all time. So, yeah, you wonder how many more fights could have taken place at that point in time and who else he couldn't have beaten it then and just continued to add to that resume.
And the shame was, again, he came back and he was still very successful. He kind of changed his style after a bit, but he was never the fighter he was before he left for the 3.5 years. He was unreal, man. Wow. I watched those old highlights, and I'm like, oh, my God, how did this? No wonder this guy couldn't lose. He was a heavyweight dancing around like a welterweight. Anyway, all right, 1970, the NBA expanded to 18 teams. They added franchises in Buffalo, Cleveland, Houston, Portland. Of course, Buffalo then went to San Diego, then went to L.A., where they're now the Clippers.
Yep.
They were the San Diego. No, they were the. No, that was the ABA team called the San Diego Conquistadors. I think in San Diego. I don't think there was I forget where it was in San Diego, but then they went to L.A. Remember the Clippers in San Diego? I can't remember my mind, but they were in San Diego, or they could have been the Clippers. Look it up for me.
Yeah.
And then they became the L.A. Clippers, but they were the Buffalo Braves, and then they went off to San Diego and then to L.A. But the teams in Cleveland, Houston, and Portland are still there. 1988. Michael Jordan wins the NBA Slam Dunk Contest with a perfect score of 50 on his final dunk. I miss the superstars in the NBA Slam Dunk. That's why I watch Slam Dunks or Home Run Derbies for superstars.
Right.
No offense to the people who do it now. They're fine at dunking and home running. And Major League Baseball has kept a decent amount of stars in the Home Run Derby. But the NBA, no superstar will do the Slam Dunks. They don't want to lose.
So they were the San Diego Clippers from 78 to 84.
So the Buffalo Braves became the San Diego Clippers and the LA Clippers.
That's right.
The ABA team was the Conquistadors.
Yes.
I had basketball cards. That's why I know that. I'm not that smart. I just had a basketball card back in the day. All right, 1990, Brett Hull of the St. Louis Blues scores 50 goals, making him and his Hall of Fame father, Bobby Hull, the only father-son combination in NHL history to score 50 goals in a season. Super Bowl stuff. The Patriots won their third Super Bowl, beating the Eagles 24-21, winning their 9th straight postseason game, tying Lombardi's Green Bay Packers. Speaking of the Packers, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on this day in 2011, winning their 4th Super Bowl. And on this day, also in 2011, Tom Brady became the first unanimous choice for the AP NFL Most Valuable Player Award, got all 50 votes. So that is the greatest day in the history of the world for February the 6th. It's brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I got to get to this really quick before we get the break. So Roger Goodell does his State of the Union presser.
Yes.
There are a lot of people that think now, it used to be just everybody come in and start asking questions, right? There's a lot of folks who believe, Mike Florio writes about in Pro Football Talk, that there are plants in there now.
Oh, for
asking
sure.
questions to push league agenda or to, help Goodell so he's not out there just taking punches. Well, he did get asked a question or something was brought up because of the gambling that, now the NFL's in Vegas, FanDuel, DraftKings, they're all in bed with the NFL now. The NFL has totally embraced wagering. So a reporter brings this up to Roger Goodell, reading his quotes from 2012 about gambling. Again, 12 years ago. Roger Goodell said in 2012, quote, "If gambling is permitted freely on sporting events, normal incidents of the game, such as a bad snap, a drop pass, turnovers, penalties, and play calling, inevitably will be fueling speculation, distrust, and accusations of point shaving or game fixing." And then the question was asked to Goodell, fast forward to now, do you see that speculation happening? And what is the NFL doing to counter or prevent it? It's so funny. Goodell spewed all that mess in 2012 when the NFL was doing everything they could to shield themselves from that dirty gambling and wagering. And now that you're in bed with them with your pajamas on, or maybe off, and now you're rolling around with the world of wagering and gambling. So what are you doing now, Raj, about all that terrible stuff? And this is why Goodell is Goodell. Quote, "That's exactly what I was talking about before. We have to protect the integrity of the sport, making sure our fans understand that what they see out there does not have any undue influence. And that is why we've actually terminated employees. We'll continue to do that. We take this incredibly serious. We understand the risk. We did not make this decision without understanding the risk that was involved once we decided to go this route. And ultimately, the decision was a decision by the Supreme Court when they legalized sports betting." So basically, the Supreme Court started all this by legalizing. No, you didn't have to get in bed with DraftKings.
No,
And
you
FanDuel.
could have said we're still going to keep our separation.
You could have kept bowing your chest up and saying, no, we can't get involved in legalized wagering, even though there's millions and millions of dollars to be made, because we don't want to screw with the authenticity of our sport.
Because no one questions the authenticity of the NFL now, right?
No, they did before this. It was rigged, it's scripted, all this other, and now it's even worse.
Yes.
But you know what the NFL cares about again, Tyler? What are those three things?
Money, and money.
There you go, ding, ding. All right, so I just had to get that, because again...
We all have our varying opinions on Roger Goodell. He can take a punch, and that's why he has the position that he has.
Look, Roger Goodell, Mark Emmert, Adam Silver, Gary Bettman... Oh, geez. Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred.
Now, Manfred maybe should keep his mouth shut sometimes.
Manfred needs to talk less. All of them are hired and paid a lot of money to stand up and basically get kicked in the jimmy every day.
Well, they're puppets.
Because they're Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog, and they're being moved by the owners. The owners pay their salaries. They are doing the bidding of the owners of the sports, or in Emmert's case, the power brokers of the NCAA.
Right.
These guys are good at talking in front of microphones and taking punches for ownership and the NCAA. Out of all of them, I think Silver has the most real power and influence, but the rest of them, hey, it's the Muppet Show. Woohoo! And the rest, Jim Henson runs it. All right, there you go. A little thing there with Roger Goodell. We'll come back. Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100 here on the Halftime Show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head on the Game. Oh, time for our Firehouse Sub Text of the Hour. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we wrap up the halftime show and pass it off to Jay and Elijah for the post-game show here on the Game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. What do you got there, my man, on the Firehouse Sub Text line?
Yeah, so in reference to what wrestlers the Big Ten and the SEC portrayed, I brought up the example of the two-man power trip, which was Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin back in the day. We had Peacock Joe weigh in and say that more like D-Generation X.
Oh.
So you have Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
I love D-Generation X. One of my favorite crews in wrestling were D-Generation X.
They reunited on my 10th birthday back in 2006.
They did that because of your 10th birthday.
It was
because
because of my 10th birthday.
When they did the press conference, we're getting together for Tyler Head's 10th birthday.
Very cool moment.
I love those guys. Road Dogg.
They had the whole crew. Road Dogg,
Bobby,
Billy Gunn.
Ric
Flair was in there. X-Pac, China.
X-Pac. I remember I was watching. I very rarely watch these reality shows.
Sure.
I watched the one they did, the Rehab House on VH1 with China was in there.
Yep.
Oh, no, they just put a bunch of celebrities together. I forget what it wasn't Rehab House. What was it called?
I think it was called Celebrity Rehab or something like that.
It was something. And China was in there, and X-Pac showed up because they were together for so long.
Yeah, right.
And all the people in the house, don't get back with him. He's awful, blah, 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 blah. And she got back with him, of course.
Yeah, they were on and off again for a while.
Yeah, a long time. I did. I liked D-Generation X, man. Very nice text. I was a huge fan of D-Generation X.
Obviously, you were out of grade school by that point in time, but we all got in trouble at some point for doing some of those gestures in the classroom or in the hallway.
Oh, they did. I mean, that was the thing, because back then, that was the attitude era, they call it, of
everything
wrestling.
was edgy.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved Stone Cold, The Rock. I still The Rock and Mankind, that match that went like 6 hours.
Oh, yeah. With the there's a really good documentary called Behind the Mat. You can find it on YouTube. It's free. You're talking about the Royal Rumble match where The Rock hit him over the head like 12 times with a steel chair while he was handcuffed.
Unbelievable match.
There's a really good behind the scenes in that documentary about that match taking place. Before the match, The Rock is like talking to Foley's kids while they're like planning out the match. Like, hey, how's Disney World? All this kind of stuff. And, Mankind's like, oh, Rock's gonna be nice to Dad. Don't worry about it. And then afterwards, he's like a little upset. He hit me so many times in the head with the chair.
It was.
And The Rock's like, I was just feeling the crowd, man.
Yeah, just feeling the crowd beating you in the head with a chair. That might have been the greatest match I ever watched in wrestling.
It was brutal.
That thing was something, man. And that got painful to watch. My head hurt.
Oh yeah,
because Mankind was getting crushed in the head so much with that chair. We bring in our correspondent from the across the street who covers South Carolina politics. Jay Phillips has a very interesting tweet, by the way, Tyler, about what's going on today across the street, the Blatt Building. Let's go live to the Blatt Building to Jay Phillips. Hey, man.
How's it going?
It's going all right.
Sorry, I was going to be here earlier. I'm not lying. I had a flat tire.
No, you didn't. Yeah, Stop it.
Sorry. I did. No, I seriously did.
You really did? Now, do you change your own flat tires?
Well, I didn't have to change it. It was flat. Luckily, I have a pump at the house, but as I'm walking to the car, I look out in my driver's side back tire.
This wasn't a roadside thing. This
was a driveway thing. Thank God.
There's very few things I can do with a car.
But I guess I can change.
I can change a flat.
Yeah.
I had so many flat tires when I was young. I could be part of a Daytona pit crew.
I just say
I can change. I can't do anything else, but I can change a flat tire.
Fudge.
Did you say fudge? Did you say fudge?
But he didn't say fudge.
No, he did not. I guarantee you, after knowing him for over 2 years, when he looked at that tire, fudge was not the word.
Now, you didn't lose the lug nuts in the snow, though, right?
No. Again, all I had to do was attach the pump and pump the tire up. But it's just a little. I think it's got a slow leak or something, which I'm going to have to ultimately do something about. So I apologize for not being here for the Tyler Head Sports Experience final segment.
It's been a fantastic sports experience with Tyler Head today. Now
the one time I've been in this week.
Yeah, slacker. Now there's a hearing today. Please, really quick.
I think it's going on right about now.
You're going to be talking about this, obviously, in the next segment in depth, but there is a hearing that you're going to talk about.
In the House today, over in the Blatt office building, this bill is going to be amended from an earlier one that Carolina and Clemson had lobbied for and then lobbied against, and then whatever. Anyway, this is state law that will, quick nutshell, allow the schools to be in charge of NIL. Mm-hmm. Allow student athletes to use the school's imagery, logos, et cetera, and their facilities. So a photo shoot at the stadium or arena or whatever.
Very nice, which they can't right now.
They can't right now.
Mm-hmm.
this would also, and this is interesting to me, it would not force these deals to be disclosed. And I wonder where that gets dicey. Because, again, now this is just my opinion, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But that's how markets get created because you know what the market is.
There's a reason why there's transparency in professional
so,
contracts. Yes. And plus, it protects the kids with transparency.
Yeah.
Be
Now,
honest.
tomorrow, right around now, Ray Tanner will be with us, and he's over there, and a bunch of people over there, so we'll be talking a lot more about this.
Oh,
But
nice.
the part about the schools getting control, sign me
thumbs up, man.
yesterday for that.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Jay Phillips, postgame show, The Logical Next. Nice job there, Tyler Head. We appreciate you. Halftime show. We'll be back tomorrow at noon here on the game in Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach.